I never wanted to buy a home when I first came to Canada. As funny as it sounds, it is the truth. The reason why I never wanted to buy a home was because mathematically speaking, renting makes sense. I was paying $1,800 a month for my 1+1 bedroom in Etobicoke, and my living expenses, including everything, were less than the mortgage that I'm paying right now. We were happy. Now, we had a few friends here who had come before us, and they all had their own homes. And most of these people used to crib about mortgage payments and maintenance. And at the time, I told my wife, why would we even want to get into something like this where people are already cribbing? People who have homes are cribbing and not happy with their decision. Now, this was back in 2020. I was not working in real estate at that time, and someone walked over to me. He was a realtor and said that he would be paying someone else's mortgage. Renting is paying someone else's mortgage and making other people rich. And I was like, that's stupid. You know, I'm a numbers guy, and I proved him with numbers that that's not true. The rent that I was paying was less than the interest that I would pay on a mortgage, the property taxes, and the maintenance that the house comes with. Numbers are with renting. Fast forward 5 years, I bought 3 primary homes. I have upgraded twice, and I have a bunch of investment properties, not just in Canada, but also in the US. So what changed? Why did I buy a home? Let me talk about my first reason, and I want to lay some context. When I came to Canada, even before coming to Canada, I was following Brandon Beavis, Canadian in a t-shirt. There were people who were making videos on YouTube about investing. I was learning about TFSA, RRSP. This is back in 2018 and 2019 when I decided to come to Canada. When I came to Canada in 2020 and when we got our jobs, we were living off of one salary, and I was investing, maxing out my TFSA for 2020, 2021. I actually maxed out for both these years. That was almost $20,000 that I put into TFSA, and I invested that money into the stock market. That made sense to me because TFSA has zero tax that you need to pay on all the compounding all these years, and it's amazing. Now, back in the day, I was also following a YouTube channel called Minority Mindset, and the host there said that you should not be investing any money that you would need for a big purchase like buying a house. Now, usually Simran and I don't watch these videos together, but at that moment, Simran was watching this video with me, and she asked me a simple question. Are you 100% sure that we are never going to buy a house? Now, obviously, secretly, she wanted to buy a home, have a big backyard, like we are Indians, right? We want to buy our own home, our land, even if it doesn't make financial sense. But that aside, she asked me this, and I used to, I used to manage all our finances, and I had the obligation for the both of us to make the right decision. And at that moment, I was not 100% sure. And that put me in a limbo. I'm sure a lot of people right now who are on the fence of buying a home would find yourself into that limbo. Should you invest in the stock market or should you save for your first home? It was a lot simpler when I had completely closed my mind to buying a home forever. But now, it was not as simple. And then I went into the rabbit hole of following more real estate based influencers like Stephan. And one of these videos talked about how that person bought a home, and the reason was that the rents keep on increasing. Even if it's at 2 to 3%, they keep on increasing while the mortgage payment will go away someday. So while I don't agree with the statement that renting is paying someone else's mortgage, paying your own mortgage will make you mortgage free someday. I did some maths, and my $1,800 per month of rent would be about $4,500 to $5,000 a month, adjusting for inflation in 30 years. And if I buy a home, of course, I'll be paying a lot more out of pocket today. But at the time of retirement, when my income is not as much, in fact, my active income will be very close to zero, my mortgage payment will be zero. And the only thing that I have to pay for is property taxes and maintenance, which will be half of what the rent would be for a similar house. That's when numbers started to make sense for me, which also meant that I would have to stop investing right now because I have to buy my home. In fact, I liquidated my TFSA when I was buying my home, and all my investing and a little bit of growth that I had for the first year of coming to Canada went to zero. Now, small side note here, the reason why you'd stop investing your money into the stock market when you are making a big purchase is because if you invest that money, let's say into a stock, Tesla or Palantir or whatever you want to invest in, if you invest into that, even if you invest in S&P 500, and when you are ready to buy a home 1 year from now, and if the stock market crashes, you'll then be forced to sell those stocks at a loss, and that's not a good thing. Which is why I started saving every single penny for my first year into EQ Bank, which was paying an interest of 1.5 to 2%. You can use any high interest savings account. There are many out there. Now, of course, there was another reason that tipped me towards buying was that my parents were coming to Canada Canada because they were retiring and they would stay here for at least 6 months out of the year, and I wanted enough space for them to live with us. Now sure, I could have rented a bigger house as well, but I was at that point convinced that at the time of retirement, I would want my mortgage to be as little as possible. But out of all these reasons, my biggest reason was that I do not want any confusion while investing in the stock market. I came to Canada with $0 invested in the stock market, and today my portfolio is over $250,000, and I continue to invest heavily into the market. And that's because I know that any spare money that I have left in my bank account, I do not need for a big purchase like buying a home, because I've already done that. And if I ever have to upgrade from the home that I'm living in right now, I'll just use my equity in 7 to 10 years and make that upgrade. Which is exactly why I became a mortgage agent. Not to help investors buy more investment properties, but to help immigrants like me make that decision of buying a home and helping them through the process. In fact, if you go back to all my videos, I've always talked about that you should prioritize income over investing. I also talk about buying your first home way below your means. The rule of 35 that I made was before I became a mortgage agent. And then you should invest a minimum of $100 per month and a maximum of 20% of your net income into the stock market. I have talked about this in many videos. Now, all my mortgage clients are part of Grow Nation, which is my inner community. There's a WhatsApp group where all the groups within that WhatsApp group, all the subgroups, none of them are related to real estate. We have one on general discussion where we talk about plumbers and electricians and, when people need them. We talk about job referrals, we talk about business, we talk about stock investing, we talk about moms. There's a group for, new moms. And then there is Tech Talks that was pretty popular because a lot of my clients are working in the tech. Even if you look at my school community, there are, in the classroom section, there are many courses available, but none of them are talking about real estate. The first one is Build a Retirement Roadmap with Me, where I very seldom talk about buying real estate as an investment. I always talk about how to maximize your stock portfolio and how to pay off your home early. I talk about Smith maneuver that I've already talked about, on this channel as well. I talk about how to get a 6-figure salary for, people who don't have 6-figure salary. I talk about retirement planning and how to retire with $5 million. And again, it talks about insurance. It talks about estate planning. It talks about different strategy, debt management. In fact, it's the other way around. I'm asking people not to take on more debt. And then even if you look at the monthly mastermind calls, it's called financial planning, investing in the US, basics of options trading. We talk about investing in the Indian stock market. We talk about, paying off mortgage early. We talk about wills and estate planning. We talk about, like interest rates. We talk about starting a business, but we very rarely, in fact, I don't remember a discussion that we had on Grow Nation, which was directly related to buying an investment property. Buying a home gave me stability and clarity. Stability because I know my expenses, I know my neighbors, I know where my kid will go to school, and I have enough space for my family. Clarity because I know exactly how much I owe the bank, how much I need to make so that I can prepay my mortgage in 17 years, how much of my disposable income can be invested into the stock market long term, so that I never have to pull money from the stock market for big purchases like buying a home. If you're watching this and you're absolutely clear that what I am talking about is bullshit and you would never want to buy a home, I'm not here to change your decision. But if you are on the fence, then hopefully this video gave you some clarity. And when you are actually ready to buy, you know where to find me. That's all I have for today. मिलते हैं अगली वीडियो में. तब तक के लिए bye bye.